Okay, for chapter 11, the main point that I will discuss is how to do the journal entries and to calculate a notes payable. So for today's example, we have for chapter 11, we have an amount of $45,000, you see, and an interest rate for 9% in a period of 7 months. And this loan is going to begin on September 1st. So the assumption is that a company is going to borrow money from a bank. It's $45,000. They're going to get it on September 1st, and they're going to pay that loan off in 7 months. So 7 months from September 1st, we go September, October, November, December, January, February, March is 7 months. Okay, so we need to have the journal entry for the first day, which is September 1st. So the company would debit cash and credit notes payable. And this will be for $45,000. Now, the next transaction we need to do is that as of the end of the year, even though the loan is not due until March 31st, we need to accrue for the interest expense that will be due on December 31st. Okay, so in this particular case, we want to debit interest expense and credit interest payable. And in this case, we have 4 months worth of interest we need to accrue for from September 1st to December 31st. Okay, so we take the amount of the loan, multiply that times 9%. And then we want to divide by, or we can actually multiply by 4 months of the year, because we're accruing interest from September 1st to December 31st. So that gives us $1,350. So that is the amount of interest that is accrued, that the company owes the bank from September 1st to December 31st. Now, since the loan is not due, we don't need to pay this amount off until March 31st, which is the due date. So our last transaction is March 31st, which is the maturity date or the due date of the loan. So in this particular case, the notes payable gets paid off. So we want to debit the notes payable for the face value of what was owed, which is $45,000. Okay. Then we have interest expense that's accrued from January 1st to March 31st, so for 3 months. So we have to list the amount of interest. So in this case, it's the amount of the loan times the interest rate of 9% times 3/12, or 3 months. So there's an additional $1,013 worth of interest. Now, the interest that has accrued, the interest payable, now also has to be paid. So we need to debit the interest expense, interest payable of $1,350. And then we need to credit cash for the entire amount of the loan plus the interest. So that's the interest expense and the interest payable. So the total amount due is $47,363. And that concludes the calculation of a notes payable. Okay, continuing on with notes payable, let's assume that the amount of this notes payable is the same, of $45,000. The interest rate is the same, it's 9%. The period remains the same at 7 months. But let's change the beginning of this loan date. And let's assume it's January 1st. And let's assume the purpose is different. Instead of getting a loan from a bank, let's assume that there's been an accounts payable outstanding for this company. This company owes another company for, say, inventory that they bought previously for $45,000. But they're not going to be able to pay this accounts payable within the allotted time. So they want to exchange the accounts payable for a notes payable. So we're going to change the date, and instead of cash, we're going to change this accounts payable to accounts payable. Okay, so now this company is going to exchange a previously outstanding accounts payable for a long-term or 7-month notes payable. Okay, now since there is no December 31st in this case, from 7 months, because 7 months from January 1st is July 31st, we don't have the second transaction. Okay, and in this case, the loan is due on July 31st. So in this particular case, there is no line item for interest payable. There's only interest expense. So in this case, interest expense will be calculated for entire 7 months. So we want to take the amount, was $45,000, times the interest rate, times 7/12 for 7 months, and the grand total of the interest is $2,363. And then we want to credit cash, which in this case will be the same exact amount as previously, of $47,363. So in this case, one, we don't have the end of the year accrual to make, and two, we're exchanging an accounts payable for a notes payable. And that's the end of the second example for calculating a notes payable.